Hi everyone and welcome. This is the Apostate Prophet. Last week I shared that I went to Turkey and came back, and that I am now back on YouTube. I also briefly shared but didn't explain that I told my parents about leaving Islam. It might surprise many of you, but for a very long time, my parents didn't know that I left Islam and that I publicly criticize it. This made me feel bad because people very often ask me about how to deal with their parents after telling them, or how to tell their parents that they left Islam. And I can't really answer. I don't want to answer because am I not a little bit of a hypocrite if I give people advices on how to tell their parents that they left Islam? But I myself didn't even do it yet because I didn't have the courage. The good thing is that my parents are Turkish, and Turkish Muslims are known to be generally less religious, less serious Muslims. The bad thing is that my parents are very religious people. I come from an extremely religious family. The good thing is that my parents are Sufi Muslims, and Sufi Muslims are generally less violent and less literalist, more about love and emotions. The bad thing is that my parents are from a very crazy and hostile Sufi order. Anyways, just a short recap for all those who are not very familiar with my story. I was born in Germany into a Turkish Muslim family. I lived in Germany until the age of 16, and at that age I had to move to Turkey together with my parents because of religious reasons. At some point I became more religious than ever. I became extremely religious, very devout. I even joined their Sufi order because for a brief time I thought that was the right way of Islam. I left that Sufi order after more and more questioning. Eventually, after more and more studying and practicing, I left Islam altogether. And when I was about to move back to Europe out of Turkey forever, I met a wonderful woman. We started a relationship, we got married, and now I am in America. And at some point I decided to criticize Islam publicly because life is so boring. I have been in America for over 2 years, and about 10 months ago I was diagnosed with anxiety. About a month ago I thought it would be a good idea to go to Turkey for a while and to make peace with the country that I left with so much hate, and to make peace with my parents. So I went to Turkey at the end of last month. I decided to stay with my parents when I was in Turkey. Growing up with Islam in a very religious Muslim family is a very tough thing. Of course, there are all these restrictions. You are not supposed to behave this way, not behave that way, not be able to make your own life choices. You're not supposed to be like the people outside in Germany. Not supposed to have relationships. Have this massive unnecessary respect toward older people and toward your parents. Endure beatings when it's necessary. It still disgusts me how Muslim youths make fun of being beaten while being young. It's not funny. It is disturbing. It messes with your personality. That's what we learn with less Islam and more science. I wasn't even allowed to or supposed to listen to music. Restrictions on eating, on dressing, and on walking, on talking. And you grow up with this massive hate, not only against non-Muslims, especially Jews, but also against other heretical Muslims. It is just a mess. It's not a pleasant experience at all. When I went to Turkey, I realized that something was very strange. I couldn't really look at my parents' faces. Everything felt so unfamiliar, and I felt that they were for some reason distanced too. Everything went okay. I wasn't so angry about everything that happens in Turkey. I started understanding things a little bit more, even if they pissed me off first. It was the third day or so that I couldn't sleep at night. I just stayed up till 6 in the morning because staying in that house and remembering my past, everything started to suddenly bother me in an extreme way. I remembered all the bad experiences, all the terrible things in the past, how the religiosity of my parents affected my past, the past of my sister and my siblings. I remembered what an impact Turkey had on me, something that I wished never had been in my life. I remembered what the military service that I had to complete in Turkey, what that did to me, and all that stuff. And I just felt like exploding. Letting everything out, because I also grew up in Germany and I saw how Germans grew up. I saw how people generally feel, and then I saw how we Muslims grew up and how my parents raised me, how our emotions and our choices and what we want and don't want don't really matter, how it actually hurts and does bad things to you when you are beaten, how the hate you are indoctrinated with just messes with your mind, and the ignorance about the world. I just felt that a lot of what happened in my life, in my past, messed with me and fueled my anxiety. So that night I felt so much resentment, so much sadness. So I got up, took my laptop, and started making notes about what I feel, how I feel about myself, how I feel about all these memories, all these things in my past. And I started writing some notes to myself that I should be remembering from now on. Some clear decisions that I want to make in order to deal with stress, to deal with everything. The next day when I woke up, I didn't feel good. My parents tried talking to me, tried understanding why I am suddenly so quiet and why I seem so mad, but I didn't want to say anything. And I was just getting ready to talk, to let everything out. And then my mom came and asked me what was wrong with me, why I suddenly act so strange. So I sat down and started talking. And I talked about how things have been bothering me, how they haven't been great parents. I went through basically everything that was on my mind, on how their love was insufficient, on how domestic violence messed me up, on how they always thought they made the right choice for me when it clearly wasn't the right choice, on how I just wish everything had been different. I'm not going into details, but I was so overwhelmed and I was just letting everything out that was in there. And eventually I came to that point where I said, by the way, I also don't believe in Islam anymore. I don't believe in it. I don't believe that Allah is my God. I don't believe that He exists. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in any of it. And she reacted saying, you didn't have to go that far. We might have made mistakes. We might have not been perfect Muslims. And I knew exactly where this was going because I've heard the same thing from so many Muslims before. And I said, no. It has nothing to do with you. It doesn't have anything to do with you or the way you raised me. Before I realized that Islam is wrong, I realized that you were not great Muslims at all. Because Islam is worse than you too could have ever been. I didn't leave Islam because of the way you raised me or because of the way other Muslims behaved. I left Islam because I know about Islam more than you two have ever known. Because I actually sat down and studied it and I actually wanted to practice it the best way possible. And I realized that it's just wrong, that it doesn't make sense, that it doesn't satisfy my curiosity, that it doesn't give me the right answers, that it has never, ever given anyone the right answers, that it is simply wrong, that it's full of superstition, lies, manipulation, and it's full of hate, so much hate that no one wants in this world, in their lives. And that people just cling on to because this religion keeps them in control with fear. What else do you expect if you are raised with fear? While at that, I also told them about how their perception of Islam was completely wrong, how their sect Sufism garbage was full of crap. I didn't stop at that. I also said, and by the way, I am also criticizing Islam publicly. I have a YouTube channel. I talk to so many people about why Islam is wrong and why I don't believe in it and why you shouldn't believe in it either. And I said, before you get into how that might affect you and how people might hear of that and think of you, how other Muslims might judge you for raising me because I criticize Islam now, because such a way of thinking is so popular in Muslim culture, I said, I don't really care if it affects you or not, because at some point I have to go my own way and do what I feel is right. And I feel that it is right. I feel that it is the best thing that I can do at this moment, to go out there and to tell people why they shouldn't believe in Islam and why I don't believe in Islam. And only if I ever come to the conclusion that what I am doing is wrong, which I don't think will ever happen, will I stop doing what I'm doing. And I hope you understand me. And if you don't understand me, then I'm sorry. Anyways, having been through all that, for the rest of the day I didn't talk to them. I was outside. My mother, meanwhile, told my father about all of this. The next day I thought I would definitely be leaving because I just couldn't deal with staying there any longer. But I was feeling bad, and at night I also spoke to my wife about what happened, and my wife told me something that made me, that changed my mind. My wife is a former Christian. She is now an atheist, just as I am a former Muslim and now an atheist. But sometimes we talk to each other about the bad things in our former religions, the good things in our former religions. There's not much that I can offer about my religion, but when it comes to good things, there is a lot that she can offer about Christianity. That night, as we were talking about getting over this whole hate and resentment and sadness from the past, my wife told me about the concept of forgiveness in Christianity, and how that concept of forgiveness was something good about her Christian past, because of how it acts between two parties, between two people. And especially because of the impact it has on you when you forgive others. Because when you forgive others, even if you don't fully forgive them for their sake, at least you forgive them for your own sake in order to make peace. During the next day, as I was trying to figure out what to do next, I remembered what my wife told me about forgiveness, and it just started making so much more sense. And I thought maybe I should forgive for my own sake. And I also started understanding my parents more and more as I started with that thought of forgiveness. And I started understanding that even if they didn't treat me well in the past, were their intentions evil? Was it bad, or what was it? In the end, I thought, no, they weren't evil. My parents weren't evil. They made mistakes, but they didn't mean to harm me. And since I am a parent now, I understand much more how hard it is to raise a child. So I found my parents sitting there together in a room and being quiet. They were obviously very sad about what happened between my mother and me. So I went to them and I went into this peacemaking mode and said, Mother, Father, I have been very mad. I am still very mad. I have been dealing with so much stress and so much anxiety over the last year. And during the last 4 years in Turkey, I tried to stay away from you because of our past, because of the painful things that I went through, because of the way you raised me, because of the way this religiosity affected me, because I just didn't want the hate and this entire strict and weird upbringing anymore. And I have so much hate and so much sadness, but I also don't hate you. And I don't want to stay mad at you, and I don't want to be angry at you forever. And I want to forgive you and want to make peace with you, and I hope that you understand me as well. I don't want you to reject me forever, and I don't want to reject you forever. And I told them that they made mistakes in their past, and they made mistakes in how they raised me, but they made those mistakes because of how they were raised. And they made choices for us that really weren't great choices, but that they made those choices because they thought they were doing the right thing. I said, I know that your intentions were good, that you cared about us, that you didn't hate us, that you didn't hate me. I know that you are not evil in the end. And that opened something up. My father said to me that he understands that not being able to share my thoughts with them might have given me trouble and a lot of stress, that he wishes I had been more able to share my thoughts with them. And I said, but how could I? I was never able to share my thoughts with you. I was never able to tell you things that contradict with traditions, that contradict with how you raised us, that contradict with our religiosity. I was always afraid of telling you things. And that opened something up, because for the first time ever, I heard my father tell me that he made mistakes, that he felt bad about how he treated me, that he was raised a certain way and that he didn't know better, that he wishes he had been able to raise me in a much better way, the way we deserved to be raised, that he wishes he had been there when I needed to share my thoughts about the world and about religiosity, about God and this and that. And that he understands that I go a different path and that I come to different conclusions, convictions different from their beliefs. And that was such a surprise, because I never heard from my father that he actually understands my thinking and that he understands that I don't want to believe. Anyways, long story short, my parents didn't kill me because they couldn't. Just kidding. The thing is that my parents are Turkish people. My parents are also Sufis, and Sufism is very common among Turkish people. And some Muslim cultures. But even among Sufis, and even among so many other Muslim orientations and sects and schools, it is very common among other Muslim families that parents don't quite deal with their children leaving Islam the way my parents dealt with it. I know of so many other people who are now part of ex-Muslims of North America or other organizations whose parents don't really react in very peaceful ways, whose parents threaten them and want to persecute them, want the state to punish them for their apostasy. And it is illegal for them to leave Islam and to publicly say that they left Islam or why they left Islam. So maybe I am very lucky that I come from a Turkish Muslim family, from a culture that is not just as violent. There are so many other people who are not as lucky. So many people who send me messages every day who say that they can't do what I am doing because they are terrified. They tell me that I was courageous. I want to take a little bit credit for that. I do have some courage because there are people who come from my culture who really don't want to say the things that I say. But I am by no means as courageous as those people who fear for their lives and who have left Islam anyways and who go online and seek their freedom. Those people are courageous. People who walk away and who run from their cultures despite being threatened with death. Those people have so much courage. I want to remind everyone that these people exist. I want to remind everyone that this is what we are dealing with. Back to me and my parents, I felt good after making peace, agreeing with my parents that I'm not evil, they are not evil. After I left, my parents sent me some messages, and one of those messages, the first one that actually arrived, was quite surprising because when I was there, I thought that I was the one who actually told them for the first time that I had left Islam and that I'm doing this publicly. But in that message, my father told me that they learned of my online work, of my online criticism of Islam one day before I arrived in Turkey. That also explains why they were so distant. I felt mad about this because some asshole really thought he has to get into other people's businesses and tell my parents that I do this thing online. Regarding leaving Islam, I showed them how I'm totally happy with life now, how things are great, how I'm enjoying life, how I'm raising my own children now in the best way possible, how I love them, how I love my wife, how I love life itself, how I have new passions like making music, for example. Taking more care of myself. I tried to make them understand that leaving Islam didn't mean I am dead. That leaving Islam just meant I'm living life differently. In a much happier way, by the way. That I don't have to hate life and just wait for the hereafter. That I can love life and teach my children how to love life as well. Instead of raising children and just being completely moralistic and hateful and weird. Anyways, everything went well in the end. And I will not stop doing what I'm doing. I feel more peaceful now that my parents know what I'm doing. Now that my parents know that I left Islam. Now that I know they might even try to watch this video and understand what I'm telling people. I am really doing what I believe is right. I believe that I'm doing what I need to do for the sake of me, you, everyone I know, and humanity. And I hope you understand me. And I hope that in the future you can see things from my angle as well. And I hope that so many other people can see things from my angle as well. And I hope that we can all just stop following Islam and stop hating each other. That's my conclusion. Thank you all so much for listening. If you want to ask me what advice to give you, if you want to tell your parents that you left Islam, well, I would say just try to be as open as possible about it. I was afraid of the reactions. I was afraid of everything that's going to happen. But in the end, I thought I really have to have the courage and to tell them no matter what. And I would just suggest you to tell them no matter what you possibly think might happen as a result. Because only if we are all able to tell our relatives and parents and governments what we actually think, what we believe, only then can we change the world. Only then can we actually make a move toward abolishing apostasy and blasphemy laws all around the world, all around the Islamic world. I'm so sorry. And maybe one day all those millions of people who have already left Islam and who are just afraid of speaking out can freely speak out and can freely leave Islam. And we can see real numbers. To everyone, whether you are an atheist, a Christian, a Jew, a Hindu, a Buddhist, or a Muslim, hope you have peace in your life, and sorry, but stay away from Islam.